In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut, sew, trim, and press your quarter circle templates for quilting. I'm using these templates in my understory quilt, but you can really use this technique with any quarter circle templates. We have two pieces. We're going to refer to the outside edge as our crust and our inside edge as the filling, just like a pie. It's kind of silly, but it's a great way to stay on track with what we're talking about. So we're going to take this filling and put it on top of our cut strip. I'm going to line up the flat bottom edge along the flat edge of my strip, and we'll start by just making the first cut up the side. Next, we'll turn it so that it's a bit easier to cut along the curved edge. This works best with a 28mm blade. I really prefer the one by Martelli. Right now I'm using a Fiskars, which is okay, but not quite as sharp. So we have our perfect little quarter circle cut out, and you're going to continue doing this all the way down that strip. So you will line up the edge of your circle, you'll cut, and then you'll flip the template and do the same. Next, we will take our crust piece and our background fabric, and in the same way place that flat edge along the flat edge of the strip and cut out just like that. This is a little difficult with a camera, so I'm actually going to come around this side and make that second cut. So there we have our crust piece, or typically this will be your background fabric depending on what you're working on. And just like we did with the filling, we're going to kind of interlock the pieces that we cut out so that we don't waste any fabric. To stitch these together, we're going to do what I love to do called glue basting. It's going to use simple Elmer's glue. I prefer disappearing purple. And we're going to start by finding the center of each piece. So I'm finger pressing this just so we can get that nice crisp crease. And I'm going to do the same thing on the crust. So we have two really nice markers of center on each piece. I'm going to take that glue and just do the tiniest bit along the center and match up those two creases. Now this is all instead of pinning. So I'm going to pull that back and continue just a very thin line of glue along the edge, and I'm going to match up those raw edges as I go. And if it's not completely perfect, that's okay. We're going to trim these blocks later and it will end up perfect. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just gluing a very thin line as close as I can to that raw edge, and then pressing raw edges together, matching those as I go. It's totally fine to have all these wrinkles and creases because we're going to stitch that 1/4 inch seam, and when it opens up, it's going to lay nice and flat. So let's take this over to the sewing machine, and a couple things before we get started. You are focusing only on this 1/4 inch seam, nothing else. So I want you to just focus on where that edge of fabric meets your 1/4 inch seam guide, and don't worry about anything else until we get there. So line it up and stitch slowly. This will get much faster as you work with it, but to start, just go nice and slow and take your time as you work. So I'm just using my 1/4 inch guide and sticking to that. I'm not worrying too much if there's bunches. As long as my needle isn't running over a fold, we're good. It's going to flatten out once we press it. So there we have my 1/4 inch pieces sewn together, and we'll head over to the iron now and press this out. So here at the ironing board, we're going to take our block and flip it so that we're ironing the back first. I like to do this so that my seams know which way to go, and I know there's no bunching or anything weird going on back there. So the back is just a quick preliminary press to get it in the right direction, and then on the front we'll do the final press. It's important to do your best to not stretch or warp your fabric here to get a perfect square, because it won't be perfect until we trim it. So just get everything pressed nice and flat, and then we will go take it over to the cutting board and trim. Now we're to the part where your block looks perfect. So our main focus is starting here, getting 2 straight edges, and then 1/4 of an inch of background fabric on each side of our filling. So my first goal here is to get that 1/4 of an inch line to line up with the very edge of my filling piece. So as long as the block looks like it's going to cut down to the correct size, which is 3 inches on this one, and I've got my 1/4 of an inch mark lined up, I'm going to trim the edge. Even if it's just a little bit of fuzz, it actually makes a big difference. So now we have one straight edge, which is great because it makes the rest of the block a lot easier. We know what to line up. So I'm going to take one of my lines and line it up with my straight edge. And then I'm going to address that top corner. So I want to make sure that it's 1/4 of an inch of background fabric or crust on those 2 edges. So now we have 2 straight edges, and the final trimming is a breeze. I want this block to finish at 3 inches, so I'm going to use that 3-inch mark, line it up with my 2 straight edges, and then trim whatever's left over. So we'll trim this edge off and do the same thing on our final edge. Again, we'll use that 3-inch mark. And because this is a bit more of trimming on this side, I do want to make sure that that 1/4 inch still lines up, which it does actually a little bit better this time. So I will trim that final edge, and we will have our perfect little 3-inch 1/4 circle block. For more patterns, tutorials, or to learn more about the understory quilt, please visit www.rachelrossi.design/understory.